Well, good morning. Welcome to Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church here at 204 South Harrison Street here in Grover Hill. We're glad you're viewing. We hope this message will be helpful to you. And of course, you're welcome to come and join us anytime and fellowship with us and just get to know some folks, break a little bread together sometimes, anytime, only on Sunday morning at 10:30 and any other time when we have activities going on here. You're more than welcome to come and be with us this morning. Well, this morning is Mother's Day, of course, and I want to share with you the Mother's Day message today. It's an interesting day, so I hope you're having a great Mother's Day today and all day long, and I hope you feel blessed and honored, at least by God, and those around you, those that you love and you care for as well. So I want to share with you just a couple stories this morning, Mother's Day stories that are I think illustrate what Mother's Day is all about and the influence that mothers have over their children and other people around them as well. So with that said, the first story that I'll share with you is by a woman by the name of Holly Girth, and it's her story. It's all about her. And she tells how she became a mother. And she starts out saying that it starts with a wedding of a boy and a girl standing at the altar. And when they said, "I do," she said it just sounded so simple. And years later, when they thought about having children, they said, we will have children. And they thought it would be the same. Only it wasn't. It was their frustration that they stared month after month at a single pink line on the pregnancy tests. There were tears, she said, and prayers, moments of anger and frustration. They wondered what family would look like for them. If maybe they had done something wrong or had been disqualified from having children. Then one night she watched a special on television about foster kids who's aged out of the system, who were told at age 18, "Have a nice life. We're finished with you here." And she wondered who would cheer for them at their graduation. Who would walk them down the aisle, rock their babies? Who would call, or who would they call when they lost a job or just had a bad day and needed somebody to talk to? She got to thinking, that's not okay. It's not okay at all. In the meantime, God showed her that she didn't have to be a physical mother to still be a mama. In Genesis, Eve is called the mother of all living. All women are mothers in one way or another. She discovered because all women bring life into the world in some way. So she birthed some books and her friends through her book shower. And she got to mother women all over the world with her words. She started to heal, but there was still a deep place inside of her that was empty, and it was saved for someone special. She prayed for her child who was out there somewhere without knowing a name or a face. Years went by, and she was invited to a banquet at a Saving Grace banquet, a place for girls who age out of the foster system, who would otherwise be homeless. There she met a 20-year-old woman that night, and she knew almost right away, this is my daughter. This is my daughter whom I've been longing to find. And her husband agreed. And she said, well, it took some time. There were lunches and conversation, hugs, and some misunderstandings and prayers. And they did the awkward dance of becoming a family until they knew it by heart. One day, that girl, whose name was Lavelle, moved into their guest room. And she took their last name, and she called them Mom and Dad. Not birth parents, but Mom and Dad. Later, Lavelle met a boy, and her dad walked her down the aisle in a white dress. She and the groom said, "I do." More time passed, and one day Lavelle called with emotion in her voice, "Mom, I'm pregnant." And Holly said, "I almost dropped the phone because this Mother's Day story is mine. I'm going to be a grandma. Just last week I sat next to my daughter in another banquet for saving grace. I leaned over and placed my hand on her beautiful belly, and I felt a flutter, my granddaughter saying hello for the first time." Holly created a family by allowing God to use her to reach out to those in need. You know, that's what God does, isn't it? He's made us his eyes and his ears and his hands and his feet and his mind and his heart here on this earth, through which he goes about showing compassion. Another story that took place many years before this story, many, many years ago. There was another woman by the name of Tabitha. Translated, it means Dorcas, that God used. And you can read her story found in Acts chapter 9, verses 36 through 43. Tabitha, or Dorcas, means beautiful gazelle. Where do Christian women today look for examples of inspiration? Well, let me tell you just about this woman named Tabitha, or Dorcas. What a remarkable example of a Christian woman whose actions spoke louder than her words. Listen to her story. Joppa, where she was from. Joppa also means beautiful, and it was located on Israel's western border along the Mediterranean coastline, about 35 miles west of Jerusalem. Today, it's incorporated into the greater city of Tel Aviv. It was a major port and trading center, and it was also strategically located on the Via Maris, a major ancient trading route that aided in the distribution of imported and exported goods. Jonah as well sailed from this seaport Joppa as he was running from God. And then taken to Jerusalem, these cedar wood was shipped there and taken to Jerusalem when Solomon was determined to build a house, to build a temple for the Lord. Who was Tabitha? How did God use her to his purpose? And why is she such a good example for women? Well, there are very few personal details about Tabitha. The Bible does not state whether she was single or married or widowed, whether she was rich or poor, or whether she had children. We simply don't know. It doesn't mention anything about her genealogy. However, one verse reveals some important information about Tabitha. At Joppa, there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated, as I mentioned earlier, Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and charitable deeds, which she did. To paraphrase it a little bit, Tabitha was a Christian woman, or a female disciple, who was thoroughly full of many good deeds and also charitable works for the poor, for whom she had active compassion and tender mercy. And she personally performed charitable deeds. Tabitha was well known by the widows for whom she sewed tunics and garments. In those days, ordering and purchasing materials, cutting, assembling, fitting, altering, sewing garments, cloaks, and robes by hand were tedious and labor-intensive endeavors. She willingly gave of her time and effort to help others. When you do that, it takes a very emotionally, physically, spiritually strong woman to consistently and personally see to the needs of others. Understandably, the whole community felt a great loss when Dorcas or Tabitha became sick and died. Her body was washed and placed in an upper room. 2 men then were dispatched to a nearby city of Lydda, where the Apostle Peter was staying. They went there to ask him to come immediately to Joppa. When Peter arrived, he saw that the widows were very upset about Tabitha's death. They showed Peter the garments that she had made for them and told him of her many good deeds. And in response, Peter sent everyone out of the room. And then he knelt down and prayed to God. After his prayer, he turned to Tabitha and said, "Tabitha, arise." And God miraculously restored her life. And then Peter presented Tabitha alive to the saints and widows. Afterwards, it became known throughout all of Joppa, and many believed on the Lord. Listen, that's the purpose of the church, by the way, to do good deeds so that others will believe in the Lord. What can we learn from Tabitha or Dorcas? Is to be a fine example of Christian women. Tabitha served the needs of the widows by sewing garments for them. She especially was compassionate and tender to their needs and actively and personally served them as well as others. Her example is an inspiration to women even to this very day, to endeavor to serve others by whatever talents God has blessed them with, whether as a seamstress or one who arranges flowers or is talented in gardening or baking or cooking or music or caring for the sick or teaching children or whatever it may be. Since Tabitha's good works were known in Joppa, especially among the widows, God used her notoriety and the event of her death and her restoration of life as a means for preaching the gospel and reaching the lost and for reaching out to many others beyond her community. Was she a woman after God's own heart like David? The Bible doesn't really say so in those exact words, but this is one case where the power of an example definitely shows that she indeed was. And the account of her life, death, and resurrection was included as a very special example indeed. Even today in many Methodist churches around the world, there are Dorcas societies comprised of women helping those in need of clothing and food and so forth, whatever else people need. Perhaps that's where John Wesley discovered his quote, his saying. He said, one, it's a great example of the church. And then he said, Do all the good you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, for as long as you can. Doesn't that sound like what Dorcas was doing? By doing good, you can raise up your children to be good, responsible citizens in the community in which they live. And they will never forget the example that you have given to them. Well, God bless you. Happy Mother's Day. I hope you just really enjoy this wonderful day today. Amen.